Godzilla King of the Monsters is coming soon and Godzilla vs. Kong for next year. You bet that I'm excited for it as a long-time Godzilla fan. But within all this excitement, we need to ask the following question. Was Legendary's 2014 Godzilla a bad Godzilla movie? Godzilla 2014 was the first major Godzilla film after retiring the character in Godzilla Final Wars in 2004. Several attempts were made to revive the franchise by both Japan and the US, but nothing worked outside few movie cameos and other scrapped ideas. It wasn't until 2014 where we finally had a real Godzilla movie that brought the character back to pop culture. And while it wasn't a failure or panned as much as TriStar's previous attempt in 1998, it met with plenty of mixed reception and many disappointments. Let's cut the chase and get to our issues, starting with Godzilla didn't get much screen time. If you're a die-hard Godzilla fan, then there's a chance this wasn't much of a deal breaker to you. If this was your first Godzilla movie and you weren't familiar with the formula, then it is understandable to be bothered by it. Here's something people need to know about Godzilla movies, which goes to many other monster movies. A vast majority of Godzilla movies aren't really Godzilla movies. More often than not, Godzilla movies are written as random stories and then they try to put Godzilla in them somehow. Basically, they are movies guest starring Godzilla. This is more evident in the Showa era movies, when it was filled with alien invasions and many other off-the-wall stories that don't really involve Godzilla beyond being a plot device or random fight. Godzilla vs. Ibra and Godzilla vs. Megalon are the best examples of Godzilla movies that weren't supposed to be Godzilla movies, as the first one was originally going to be a King Kong movie, while the other was a Jet Jaguar solo movie.
What's the name of this movie anyway, guys? I don't know.
Later movies would put more focus on Godzilla, but most of the screen time goes mainly to the human characters and or the enemy of the movie. People would often use Planet of the Apes and the Transformers as a comparison of having CGI characters as the main ones, but it doesn't work here. Unlike the apes and the Transformers, Godzilla isn't really a character. He's a wild beast who doesn't speak or interact with anybody. Unlike Kong or Gamera, you can't give Godzilla a human companion to talk or connect to. This is like Bruce in Jaws. Yes, he is the main attraction of the movie, but he is not the main star. That would be the humans who we spend the entire movie with. Same thing with the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. Their screen time combined is about 10 or 15 minutes or so, while the rest of the movie is focused on the humans. Another thing to remember that this is not a sequel to a previous installment. This Godzilla is a new Godzilla to us. So you have a new entity that wasn't introduced before and practically no one knows what it is, so the logical course of action is to spend the majority of runtime figuring out what it is, what makes it tick, and how to defeat it once and for all. Which was exactly how the original movie went by. Opening incident, scientists and eyewitness connecting the dots, the monster briefly shows up, more science and military talk, main rampage scene, planning the final blow, ending scene. Oh, and between all of this was more human drama. Which then gives us a tangent when the Mutos were giving a similar treatment. Introduction, figuring out what they are, another attack, figuring out how to kill them, final battle, end. In the old movies, the focus is given to the enemy monsters since Godzilla was already introduced in previous movies, and you could say it's the same thing here.
Oh! Well, it's about time, Mr. Mark Spitz. Have a nice swim.
Yeah, take your time. Thanks, Godzilla. Oh.
I'm going on an assumption with this point, but I think the movie makers made the movie with the assumption everyone is familiar to who or what is Godzilla from his 60 years of history, so it makes total sense to give more screen time to the new monsters that weren't introduced before. Another factor to Godzilla's time on screen is the movie length itself. Back then, movies were shorter, ranging from 1 hour to an hour 20 minutes, so compared to a 2-hour movie, it will appear like he had fewer time than normal. Granted, some Godzilla movies did clock at 2 hours, but they had the same issues of giving more focus to the humans and enemies rather than on Godzilla himself. Basically, this is not exclusive to this movie. Now, can you give Godzilla more screen time? Yes, you can, but it doesn't mean it always works. One way to do so is by giving him multiple battles. In GMK, for example, Godzilla's screen time was plenty because he fought a lot of battles against multiple enemies, including the army, in one of the most awesome displays of powers for its time. Until Shin Godzilla came and set a new record. On the other hand, you have Godzilla vs. Hedorah, where Godzilla fights this one monster throughout the movie in what I believe the longest time Godzilla was given in his movies. This movie shows how not to give Godzilla a longer time than it needed. Because Godzilla is fighting one monster, it gives the impression that Godzilla is too weak to defeat him. Godzilla couldn't defeat Hedorah in his weaker stages, and we're expecting him to defeat him in his stronger stages? And even then, that defeat came too early, so the movie drags by having yet another battle you just want to shout, "End it already!" And that was the Showa era, where Godzilla was granted the power to fly and turn himself to a living magnet. So when you have a more realistic Godzilla who can't use fancy acrobatics and you're limited to basic physical attacks, you can't add much variety in battle, and by dragging it for too long, you'll make the battle more repetitive and boring.
He's got a tree! He's got a tree! That's not the Godzilla we know! He's fighting dirty!
Godzilla? A tree? That's not like you. Why? Why?
Yeah, you're right. It's not the right club for this hole anyway.
Now let's go in there and win our way.
Also, the Mutos are just the starter monsters. Do you really expect Godzilla to waste his time on small fry in his first entry? The second point of discussion we have: the Mutos overshadowed Godzilla. So in addition to Godzilla's minimal appearance, the audience noticed that the enemy monsters took more screen time than the titular monster. This isn't really that big of an issue, and I think they needed the time they took to introduce and establish the monsters. Unlike Godzilla, the Mutos were entirely new monsters never seen in the franchise. As such, it felt necessary to give them the time they needed to flesh their origin and their impact in the world. This practice is no stranger to the Godzilla franchise, as almost every movie spends a great deal of time establishing the monsters before we get Godzilla's first on-screen appearance. The Mutos are Cloverfield clones. How exactly? Putting them side by side, there's nothing similar between them. Their body structure, posture, and overall design aren't similar. I'm surprised that no one brought up they look like the insects from Starship Troopers. Or better yet, you know what came to my mind when I first saw the Mutos? The Paramouts from the Oddworld franchise. Hey, give me some credit since I didn't go with a lazy Cloverfield answer. This is what happens when you play Call of Duty, kids. It kills your imagination. The humans are uninteresting. So when your star monster hangs around in his trailer till his cue, you need to entertain the audience with your human characters. So how did the humans fare here? Well, I say 50-50. Joe Brody and Dr. Serizawa were the more engaging characters, and they had the better acting and better presence than everyone else in the movie.
My wife died here! Something killed my wife! And I have a right to know! I deserve answers!
A shame one of them was killed off early on, so say hi to his less interesting son Ford Brody and his dull surprised wife Ellie. Glad their acting improved in time for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they were a letdown. One of the complaints about Ford is being a soldier in a time when Hollywood was pushing for the American soldier heroes in our movies. And still at it. But in Godzilla's lore, the military is one of the main players in many movies. Either as soldiers who join to take revenge over the death of their loved ones, or regular people forced to join the military against their will because they were too smart to be left alone. But when it comes from the American side, it is kind of iffy when we are still in the War of Terror period of history and pushing for the American military, making people see these movies as an allegory for the War on Terror. Not making this up, when Cloverfield was first shown in theaters, I was baffled by the reception that insisted the movie was about terrorism based solely on a line by one of the characters who thought they were under terrorist attacks, as if no one have seen a monster movie in their lives. Godzilla is ugly looking. Godzilla went through different designs in his run. Some of them were great like King Kong Godzilla, and others weren't so great like Rat-Face Final Wars Godzilla. When the design was first shown, the only thing I had issue with is the tiny square head and the thick neck, but that grew on me and came to accept it for what it is. It's not as radical departure like how Zilla ended up like, and it's still familiar to be recognized as Godzilla. The addition of the gills was also interesting, and it's a new addition in a good way. And can we appreciate that they got his colors right this time? Godzilla is grey and shoots blue flames. How hard is it to get that? I never understood why the American media always portray Godzilla as green and shooting red fire. Did they not see any Godzilla movie? Grey is not the same as green. Godzilla was never green. Never! The movie is too dark to see anything. This is an issue I agree with. The lighting of the night scenes reached Alien vs Predator requiem of being too dark to see anything. It doesn't help how the monsters are colored in a way they can easily blend with the red and black backgrounds. This is worse in the home releases as they look even darker than how it was in theaters. The most decent version is the Blu-ray 3D release where it's slightly lighter than the regular version. Godzilla was a hero than a villain. Godzilla started as a symbol of terror, a reminder of the horror of the nuclear warfare. His first movie was a serious horror movie. Later on, his image turned to a superhero, a defender of Earth against other monsters and alien invaders, which sadly is the image stuck to him in the West with the usual B-movie promotions and marketing it to kids in addition to the help from MST3K.
Rated everyone 10 and up.
Available now for the PlayStation 2 system, coming soon for Wii.
And while Godzilla is usually portrayed as a protector of Earth, a thing even the Orobuchi movies went with, he is still treated as a threat and not a Gamera level hero where the humans cheer for him like a friend. When the monster is defeated, the army is still cautious around him, or plot the next move to kill him once and for all, like the ending of Godzilla 2000, where it ends with Godzilla continuing his rampage after defeating Orga. This movie plays the heroic Godzilla side, which wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for the marketing that gave the impression that Godzilla is the real threat. He's the real danger. He's the one Joe Broder is ranting against.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture. Vishnu takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
You are not fooling anybody when you say that what happened was a natural disaster. You're lying. It was not an earthquake. It wasn't a typhoon. Because what's really happening is that you're hiding something out there. And it is going to send us back to the Stone Age!
However, all the dread was about the Mutos and the danger is their ability to multiply. So Godzilla was the ally the army ignores in favor of the Mutos, and the movie ends with the humanity cheering for him when he wakes up and leaves. Personally, I don't mind a heroic Godzilla as long as he gets to be a badass fighter. But my preference is the evil Godzilla, the dark Godzilla who attacks humanity. This is why I love the original and recently with Shin Godzilla being my current most favorite Godzilla movie. I know when people think of Godzilla they think of the monster fights, but if you want a proper Godzilla movie that showcases the horror of Godzilla or the danger he brings, focus on the ones where Godzilla is solo with the army being his enemy. The 1954, 1984 and Shin Godzilla are the best examples. And if you want one with a fight, I suggest the Kiryu Saga since it keeps Godzilla as an enemy of humanity. And if that wasn't enough, watch Giant Monsters All Out Attack, where you get one of the evilest Godzillas in the franchise who loves to torture his enemies and kicks them while they're down. Now, does this make this movie bad? It depends on what you're looking for. Personally, I enjoyed it despite some of the issues mentioned. However, it seems Legendary and Warner Brothers did catch on to these issues, and as such, it feels like Kong Skull Island did its best to address them all. Kong had plenty of screen time and was introduced very quickly. There were multiple monster battles to keep your attention, the human characters are more engaging, and every major action scene was under the bright sunlight while at the same time night scenes were clear to see even in the dark. Will King of the Monsters hold this momentum and give us the battle of the century before the other battle of the century? We will see next May. Until then, take care everybody. That's all for today, and I'll see you next time.
Okay, I got a question. Why doesn't he go straight for the flame,
Because the man is a professional. The man is a real class act.
He's first rate.